Welcome everyone, and today we are covering one of the most valuable business skills you can build. How to read and negotiate commercial contracts with confidence, even if you're not a lawyer. Here is why this matters. Most costly business disputes don't happen because someone acted in a bad faith. They happen because someone signed a contract without fully understanding a clause. Now, whether you're a founder signing a vendor agreement, a procurement manager handling, supplier contracts, or a freelancer reviewing a client agreement, the ability to spot risk in a commercial contract protects your revenue, your relationship, and your reputation. Now, by the end of the session, you will know how to structure a contract review checklist, the five clauses that cause the most disputes, practical contract negotiation tips you can use in your very next deal, the contract red flags that should make you stop and call a lawyer. Now, let's get into it. Let's start with a mindset shift. A contract isn't just a paper, it's a risk management. It defines who owes what, to whom, by where, and what happens if something goes wrong. The most common mistake in business contract review is treating the contract like a formality after the deal is already agreed. In reality, the contract is the key. Now, verbal agreements and email threads mean very little once a contract exists. Most contracts include an entire agreement clause that wipes out everything that was discussed before. Three mistakes that I constantly see or I have been, experiencing in the last 15 years. First one is skimming instead of reading. Now, a lot of people just jump straight to price and timeline and skip definitions, liability, and termination sections. The second mistake is just assuming that standard means fair. A vendor standard template is written to protect the vendor and not. The third and by far the most common mistake a lot of people make is negotiating too late. Yes, I'm the only person who always says that, negotiation is something that you always do from a position of power. But you also need to remember that once a contract is signed, your leverage to negotiate is gone. Negotiation only happens before a signature and never after a dispute. Keep this rule in your head for the rest of the session. If you don't understand a clause, don't sign it. Just ask. Now let's build your contract review checklist. I always recommend reading any commercial contract in three phases. Phase one, the skeleton. Now read the whole document once, fast, without stopping to analyze. You're just identifying the structure. Who are the parties and are they correctly named? Correct legal entity and not just a brand. What is the term? What is the start date, end date, renewable terms? What are the deliverables or scope of work? What is the payment structure? Phase two, the risk pass. This is where you slow down and focus on the clauses that actually create financial or legal exposure. The five highest risks in almost every commercial contract are: the first one is, of course, your indemnification clause. Who compensates whom if a third party sues over a deal? Look for whether it's mutual or one sided. The limitation of liability. Is there a cap on damages? Are certain damages like lost profit excluded? Third, termination clause. Can either party exit and under what notice period? Are there penalty for early termination? Fourth, intellectual property ownership. Now, especially in today's scenario, it is very important when it's a work for hire or development agreements. Who owns the final product? Fifth clause, your government law and dispute resolution. Which jurisdiction applies and is arbitration mandatory instead of the court? Phase 3, the alignment phase. Now cross check the contract against what was actually discussed in the negotiation. Does the payment schedule match which was, what was verbally agreed? Are the deliverables the same scope you priced? Contracts often drift from the original conversation, sometimes accidentally and sometimes not. Here's a practical tip. Keep a simple spreadsheet or notes or a document listing every clause that concerns you with a column for why it matters and what is a proposed change. This is your negotiation roadmap in the next segment. Let's talk about negotiation strategy, which is how you turn review into leverage. Now that you know what to look for, let's talk about how to actually negotiate a commercial contract without damaging the relationship. The first principle, negotiate the few things that matter, not everything. Now, if you push back on 20 small items, you lose credibility on the two or three that are genuinely important. Prioritize your list from the third phase. Separate deal breakers to nice to have. Principle 2. Anchor with a proposed edit, not just an objection. Instead of saying this liability clause is unacceptable, just say we'd like to cap liability at a total of the contract value mutual for both the parties. Giving specific language always moves the conversation faster and shows that you understand the contract negotiation. Your contract negotiation isn't about conflict, it's about precision. The third principle that I believe in is understand leverage before you negotiate. Always ask yourself, who needs this deal more? A small vendor negotiating with a large enterprise buyer has different leverage than the reverse. Adjust your ask accordingly, but don't assume you have more leverage just because the other side is bigger. Reputational risk, exclusivity, and timeline pressure can all shift the balance. The fourth technique or fourth principle that I believe in is use conditional language to keep the momentum. We can agree to your proposed payment terms if you extend the termination notice period to 60 days. This is the classic trade-off negotiation technique. It signals flexibility while protecting your priority. Now, the fifth principle is getting anything and everything in writing. Verbal concessions during a negotiation all mean nothing unless they appear in the red line document. Confirm every agreed change in writing before moving to the signature. Now let's move on to what are the common red flags to watch. Here are a few common red flags that you should always note down in detail. Auto renewal clauses with long notice period. Example, must cancel 180 days in advance. One-sided indemnification. You indemnify them, but not vice versa. Uncapped liability exposure. Vague scope of work and other duties as assigned. Unilateral amendment rights. The other party can change terms without your consent. Non-compete or exclusivity clauses which are buried in boilerplate section. If you see two or more of these in a single contract, that's a strong signal to involve legal counsel before signing. Let's talk about a real world scenario. Let us apply this principle. Now, imagine you're a small agency who's signing a service agreement with a mid-sized client. You do pass, and I see the basics look fine. Terms, scope, payment schedule all match your goal. In the second step that we had discussed, you spot an indemnification clause that only protects the client and not your agency. A 90-day auto renewal with no easy opt-out, no cap on liability. Here is how you would approach the contract negotiation conversation. Hey, thanks for sending this over. Overall, this looks aligned with what we have discussed. 3 quick terms before we finalize. First, we'd like to take the indemnification clause to be mutual, since both parties should be protected equally. Second, could we shorten the renewal notice period to 30 days instead of 90? And third, we would propose capping liability to the total fees paid under this agreement, which is standard for all engagements of this size. Notice what happened. Specific, reasonable, framed as a standard practice. And each ask ties back to the identifiable risk, not just a pushback for the sake. This is what effective contract negotiation sounds in practice. Let's talk about recap and call to action.